So what's everybody talking about today? Obviously, the main event of AEW Dynamite last night between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa. We talk about that and also everything that happened on AEW Dynamite and NXT next on the Squared Circle Psycho Babble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Ralph, this main event, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, to say the least, was well beyond my expectations, and some people even calling it the best women's match ever. Your thoughts?
It certainly exceeded all my expectations. And I only say that because we've already seen them have a match and we know that the match was really good. So usually when you try to live up to what you've already done, now that people are expecting you to do that again, it's usually much harder to please people because, you know, there's only so much you're going to be able to do. Granted, the circumstances going into this match were much different, as everybody could see. This was how did they build this? Was this a hardcore match, an unsanctioned match?
That's lights out, unsanctioned match.
Okay, so this was the second one, I believe, in AEW history. And dare I say, the best one in AEW history? Is that fair? Would you say this was better than Moxley and Mr. Omega there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really want to play the comparison game. Because,
I was going to get to that.
Because a lot of people are saying, oh, it's the best women's match ever, one of the greatest matches of all time. I think, you know, right now, because it happened so recently, it's easy to say those kind of claims, but I think you really need to think about this. First off, this is the third Lights Out match because there was Moxley versus Joey Janela at Fyter Fest, the first Fyter Fest. That was the first Lights Out unsanctioned match. Then it was Moxley and Omega, and now this one. I think it was very, very good. Do I say it's the best? I don't know. I still like the Omega Moxley one because it told a really good story, and this one did too. They laid it out there, and you know, considering that, I don't know what to really expect from this match. I wasn't expecting thumbtacks. I wasn't expecting the amount of blood Britt Baker laid out there. Some serious bumps on the ladder, some serious bumps through tables. Definitely, you know, not even for a woman's match, just a flat out lights out unsanctioned match. It was a great, great match. Now, if you want to call it the best ever, you know, that's your opinion. If you want to call it the best lights out match ever, the best women's match ever, obviously you can make the case for either one, but I think it's a little too rushed to go quickly saying that was the best ever of anything right now. It was a great match nonetheless.
And usually whenever it's the most recent of anything, people usually start talking about the best. It's the best this, it's the best that. It was very good. It was definitely much more hardcore than I was anticipating. I certainly did like you. I did not anticipate thumbtacks by any means at all.
No.
That's very rare to see this day and age by any standard, not just for women. I can't even. I don't think I've ever, to be quite honest, I have never seen a women's match where they've used thumbtacks. Have you?
I mean, the only matches I think of with thumbtacks involve ECW, Darby Allin, or Mick Foley. That's all I could think of. And never a women's match. So props to Britt Baker for taking the power bomb onto those thumbtacks. And speaking of which, although she didn't win the match, do you feel like she got over more than Thunder Rosa did, even though Thunder Rosa won the match?
So before the thumbtack spot even happened, seeing her with the bloody face, which, mind you, props to Britt Baker there, because my God, that was the only thing. There's only a few people that can truly gush blood to that extent and make it look as good as she made it look. Ric Flair was synonymous and well known for his ability to. I don't know if she bladed last night or what
I think
ended up happening, but my God, she was like a leaky faucet that could not be stopped last night. And the first thing that I thought was Becky Lynch. And I hate to make comparisons, but I don't say it in the sense that I'm comparing the two, you know, wrestler to wrestler. I'm saying it in the sense that when, unfortunately, Nia Jax knocked out Becky Lynch or whatever happened, that unfortunate mistake where she like smashed her face, that was a star-making moment. Accidentally, the same way Stone Cold Steve Austin having his head busted open in his match against Bret Hart, passing out, all that type of stuff. That was a star-making moment. I truly feel like last night, Britt Baker got over to an extent that she could only dream to be over with a majority of the fans, because thinking back to where Britt Baker was when she first debuted, she wasn't getting the response from the fans as a face that a lot of people felt like she was going to get. She wasn't clicking in the ring. And she's just really coming into her own ever since she's become this heel. And it's really working. And all of these things are really starting to fall into place for her. And I know that sounds a little strange saying, oh, well, because she was cut open in the way that she bumped in the match and the thumbtack spot and all of that. All that stuff really helped legitimize her last night in the sense that she probably got a lot of respect from fans just for what she put herself through.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So that was my lasting impression from it. There were a few people that I really felt flexed last night and showed that they have it factor. Two of them were on Dynamite. One of them was on NXT, and she was one of them for sure in my mind.
Yeah, and we'll talk about who the other two are later on in the show, but Britt Baker's performance last night. Now, like I said, I don't want to make the comparisons, but I feel like this is somewhat warranted. And you think about certain wrestlers' performances who have this really unbelievable match, yet they lose, but yet in the loss, they get to that next level. Whether they're like a mid-carder becoming a main eventer, an unknown name becoming now a household name, whatever the case may be. You talk about Mick Foley after Hell in a Cell, King of the Ring 1998. You already mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin against Bret Hart. Darby Allin against Cody Rhodes in the time limit draw. Britt Baker here, I believe in the losing effort, made herself from the possible face of the women's division in AEW to the flat-out face of the division. And if she does not get the women's title before or at Double or Nothing, Tony Khan has some serious booking issues because she already should have had it, but last night just defined why she should be the face of this division, why she should be the women's champion, and why almost every storyline in AEW's women's division right now needs to start with her.
And don't you almost feel so everybody's talking about this match. They're getting the opportunity to main event. They're talking about it today, how it delivered. They're talking about Britt Baker having this, what most are saying is like a star-making moment. Anybody who watched the match, or a good majority of people that watched the match are praising it. Don't you think the match itself and the fact that it main evented and how much attention it's getting just goes to show you like the tournament that they had put together was essentially kind of more or less a waste? I mean, the only thing that really came out of that was Maki Ito. Like a lot of people are into her. Other than that, I can't really think
of. And she's gone. She's already gone back to Japan.
I can't think of any major positives that came out of that. I felt like Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker should have certainly been involved in that a little bit more, had a little bit better storyline interaction. That was the one critique of this, right? Going back to AEW, building up to Revolution, you look at the way Jericho and MJF obviously attacked Papa Buck. You would think like what we saw last night would be something that would be warranted, like a type of match, a blood and guts match, like a really big moment that you would get out of something where, you know, it's like a blood feud, like you had with MJF and Jericho and the Young Bucks. Now, don't get me wrong. Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, certainly they have history together, but nothing led me to believe it warranted like an unsanctioned match because the tension that they've had has essentially been a couple run-in spots here and there. Nothing like too crazy. Nothing that would push me to believe like, okay, well, they need to have this unsanctioned match. That would be my one critique of not the match, but just like the situation leading into it. Because I felt like, again, this could have been a really much bigger moment than it is right now had it had some momentum going into it. And I felt like, you know, just the up and down of the feud because of whether it was because of the tournament or just not fully investing in the women's division, whatever the case may be, they kind of took a break from their feud, went back into it, and then kind of eased into this match. And it was kind of like, okay, well, they're going to main event. Let's see how they do. And granted, they went in there and tore the house down, which is great. So the build to it was a little lackluster. And I think it really showed that the tournament itself, they made a big mistake in terms of their booking.
I totally agree with you. And the fact that this was really the only storyline in the women's division for a good 6 months. Let's put it that way. And it was on and off. You know, Thunder Rosa wasn't there. Thunder Rosa was there. Britt Baker wasn't there. Whatever the case may be, they couldn't consistently keep the momentum going for those 6 months. but there was a lot of pressure with this match.
Absolutely.
The fact that they needed to deliver even an average match just to say, oh, they main evented and it was a decent match, a watchable match. No, they went out there and said, screw you, Moxley, screw you, Omega, screw you, Darby, screw you, Janela. We could do what you can and then some. That's what they showed last night. And just giving them the opportunity to do that just shows, just let them do their thing. Don't worry about eliminator tournaments. Don't worry about, trying to bring over a certain style from other aspects. Just bring the story and let these wrestlers just have the match. If you build the story and the match follows through, it's definitely warranted. And this match, even without the best build, pulled it off in such a great way that now you can even start trusting to have multiple storylines in the women's division. And I definitely think they started that last night. I mean, they kind of did it already, but now we're getting a little bit more growth between Jade Cargill and Red Velvet.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that one of your two stars from AEW besides Britt Baker?
It wasn't. I certainly would include Jade in there because, in terms of trying to make your talent feel like they're capable of maybe something they're better than, because Jade right now, I think she's probably still very green, but the way they were able to highlight her in a squash match and the way that she was able to come out with her entrance made it feel like she was a big deal, whether she went out there and performed and had a 20-minute match or she had a squash match. She came out of last night looking really good. And I like that. This is why we always talk about on the show. Look, you don't have to have a 20-minute back and forth match that if it doesn't make sense to. Like, sometimes it makes sense to go out there and have your talent just look good in a 2-minute squash match. And last night, I thought that she looked really good. I thought that she kind of expressed some of that it factor and showed that she's certainly capable of much more than just being, a more athletic female, somebody who can go out there and actually work and be a major player in the women's division because, they need to find talent like that. They can't just rely on these tournaments and these obscure type situations where, I criticized them for this a couple of weeks ago. I felt like the tournament was booked for people who read dirt sheets, who are really diehard wrestling fans. And that's fine. You want to have a little bit of everything for somebody, but at the same time, don't alienate the casual fan or even the fan that, look, not everybody has that much time to invest in pro wrestling and to do research and say, okay, well, I know who this girl is from Japan or this person from the Indies. Sometimes you just need to go with the people who either, look the best or have the best personality or can get the most attention or who are your best wrestlers and your biggest draws. And for last night, Jade looked good. And I think Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa really made a name for themselves. And they're going to be the bigger draws as far as the women's division is concerned.
Right.
Going forward.
And right now, if you focus the women's division on Baker, Rosa, Cargill, Velvet, and Sheeta, those 5, and just incorporate 2 or 3 stories each week on Dynamite, you will improve that women's division. That's all you need to do. Just focus on those 5 and try to keep them relevant each and every week. Just having Hikaru Shida watching in the backstage really helps because it's like, all right, whoever wins most likely gets a chance at the AEW Women's Championship or gets thrown up in the rankings. Now, Britt Baker was in the top 5. She loses, so let's see where she goes. If Thunder Rosa is staying in AEW, does she go back into the top 5? Was this her last match? Because, NWA is coming back this Sunday, so does that mean this was her swan song, making Britt look good? And if that was the case, I would have had Britt win this match, but, wins and losses in that situation don't matter. Now you have Cargill and you have Red Velvet. Have that storyline go. Red Velvet is undefeated and is in, I think, either 1 or 2 in the rankings last time I checked. So have her and Cargill have a storyline that culminates maybe in a match either on a special episode of Dynamite or a Double or Nothing. And that's it. You don't need much. They're trying to incorporate so many different people into a 2-hour show that it loses sometimes the momentum.
I agree. And it takes momentum away from some other individuals, not just like Britt Baker or Thunder Rosa, but just, whoever it may be. If they're trying to build somebody up, if they're not on TV and on a weekly basis or every other week, people tend to forget about you. It's very easy to forget about people.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you before this. I said, was Ethan Page even on TV last night? You
was
said
not.
no. I didn't even realize it. And he was a guy that debuted. He had I think unfortunately last week his match was kind of squandered because of the whole audio issue.
Right.
And then they left him off TV this week, which, he still knew they could still do something with him. But, somebody that debuts like that, you probably want to make him feel at least special in some way.
All right. So I got to ask, I thought it was Jade. We already know Britt's one of them. Who was the second person that you said what made a star out of themselves last night?
Without when he's already a star. I think last night he really kind of solidified a couple of different things, and that was Christian. I loved his promo. I thought it was great. I thought it was exactly what he needed to say. I think that he proved that, he's got a lot of pressure on him going into AEW. And it may not even be because of him and himself putting that pressure on himself going into AEW. I think it's mostly because Tony Khan promised so much out of him. And, I think a lot of people, including us, were critical of this situation. Well, not so much us, but some people were critical of Christian going into AEW and potentially challenging for the title right out of the get-go. And last night, he kind of made things clear why he's there, what he intends to do. He even pointed out that, look, he knows that some people have been critical of him going to AEW, and he doesn't intend to take spots from anybody. He's going to be there, and eventually he's got his eye on that title, but that's not what he's intending to do right now. So I felt like he was great. I thought that he silenced a lot of critics, and he proved that he is well worth the money, especially because he can talk, and that is not an easy thing to come by in wrestling.
Right. I like the promo too. I thought it was very, very good. And it was short and simple. It was only 2 minutes, the promo. And he got everything that he needed to go out. You got some of these guys that go on these really, really long promos and they really go nowhere. Christian, told you why he was there, what his goal is eventually, and what's next for him. He's there to outwork everybody. He's there for the AEW title eventually. So, like he said, Kenny Omega's on borrowed time. I thought it was a good promo. I don't think it was the best promo, though. I think the best promo on Dynamite this week belongs to MJF. I know, MJF, anytime he touches the microphone, he's going to give a good promo. But this week, he explains that the faction is called the Pinnacle, what that means. Obviously, everybody being the best at what they do. Wardlow's the best muscle man, the best tag team in FTR. You got Sean Spears there that's going to give people chair shots. And of course, MJF being the star of the show. I love his jabs at Chris Jericho, his, body shaming type promos there with the pecs separating, the gut, the balding hairline. I thought it was all good. A typical MJF promo, but it was, I thought, very, very good and a great way to start off this new faction, the Pinnacle.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that MJF's promo was really good. I think that Tully Blanchard being out there and cutting the promo that he cut, talking about how he started his career with the best faction and he's going to finish his career with the best faction. I thought that was a good touch. I think that out of this group, Wardlow is going to be made to look like a star. This will kind of hide some of, if he's green at all, if he's a little inexperienced just at this level, because, he essentially was on the indie scene before he made his way to AEW.
Right.
He's a big guy. He's got a good look. He's young. He's athletic. I think he's got a really bright future ahead of him, whether that's in AEW or WWE. But I feel like he's going to be a star coming out of this group, and him being in the group, it's not like he's going to be expected to go out there and wrestle a match week in and week out to prove that he's ready to go. And that was the same thing when he was, I guess you could say in the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
FTR is great. A lot of people consider them the best tag team in the world, so it only makes sense for them to be there. I think if there's one guy that really needs to prove that he belongs in this group, it is Sean Spears. Because I think even just kind of looking at him amongst the group, it's almost like it feels like he doesn't fit for some reason. I don't know why.
I've seen the comparisons of him being the Paul Roma of the 92 version of the Four Horsemen.
I don't know if I'd go that far. It's just Wardlow, you look at him and he's got that it factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And FTR is very well established. Tully is Tully, MJF is MJF, and then it's like, all right, well, Sean Spears is the guy that was Ty Dillinger, that a lot of people felt like could have done something, and who knows? Maybe he proves that he's capable of a lot more than he's been given to this point. and that's kind of like what MJF was getting at. But if there's anybody, if you lined them up and said who doesn't belong in this group, I probably would point to him.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think the matches for the most part were pretty good. But I will say there was one criticism for this show that I have as far as the matches are concerned, outside of the Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa, and that is Cody Rhodes and Penta and Eddie Kingston, John Moxley versus the Good Brothers were almost the exact same segment. So the heels dominate most of the match. They're isolating. They're beating up the faces. The faces come back. And then as the match approaches towards the end, the faces win with a roll up. Cody's case, it was the sunset flip. Moxley wins with the roll up. Then the heels beat up on the faces. And then someone comes out to save the faces. And then that creates the storyline afterwards. For Cody, it was QT Marshall. For the Moxley segment and the Kenny Omega segment, it was the Young Bucks. Did you feel the same, or am I just overthinking this?
No, you're not overthinking it. I think it's a criticism that we've talked about here on the show before. For whatever reason, an easy way or an easy out for AEW to try and kind of build storylines is the schmaz. They have somebody come out and there's this big pull apart brawl or there's some interaction. There's other ways to do it. You don't necessarily always have to have somebody come out and interfere in a match or come out after the match and jump somebody. It happens a lot. It happens frequently, and people notice it. We're not the only ones who point that out.
Right.
I mean, you literally, you can just watch Dynamite on a weekly basis and know what's going to happen.
Right. And it made sense in the Moxley Kingston versus Good Brothers match. I think that was the right place to put that kind of segment, because it keeps the storyline in place with Kingston and Moxley, but also extends the storyline with the Young Bucks. The Cody Penta, while it made sense because obviously they're leading to some kind of, I would think, some rematch with Penta and Cody. What I think is really annoying with this is that Penta loses with a sunset flip, but yet he kicks out of a Canadian Destroyer. He kicks out of a Crossroads, a Cody cutter, but a sunset flip pins him?
That's the element of surprise. That's the point of the maneuver. It's like a roll up or
but after Penta already kicked out of these 3 devastating moves that should have ended the match, he gets the element of surprise. Like nothing distracted him. He just lost on a sunset flip.
If Britt Baker can kick out after being thrown through thumbtacks and on chairs and everything else, he can kick out of a sunset flip, damn it.
That's what I'm saying. And the move that Britt Baker kicked or eventually lost to was a freaking air raid driver tiger driver, through the table.
That's right.
Sunset flip? Come on. Like that makes Penta look weaker, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah. All right, NXT, you already said someone looked like a star in NXT, so let's start it off with that. Who do you think was the star coming out of NXT last night?
I think it was a one LA Knight, and not so much because of the way that his match went down, but just his presence, his aura, everything about him. He literally can go out there, cut a promo, and just get attention, and that's a rare thing in pro wrestling. He looked good. During the promo, like coming out, he was confident in the match that he had, even though it was a short-lived match. He had some aggression to him. Like he's there to prove a point. And this is, I think, a big opportunity for somebody who's kind of bounced around from, I guess you would say, smaller promotions like, TNA, and he's been other places, NWA, coming from there. And I think that eventually his goal is obviously to work his way up to the main roster. But I think that he's going to have a lot to contribute, and I think there's going to be a lot of interesting storylines, especially if you look back to his promo last week. He already talked about, look, I'm not here for flash. I'm a pro wrestler. I'm gonna do it the way I do it, and I'm not going to do any of the stuff that you younger pro wrestlers are doing. And I think that will make for an interesting dynamic against some of the guys that work the style that like they work in NXT and pretty much across pro wrestling nowadays.
Now we are 3 weeks away from NXT Stand and Deliver. I feel like a lot of matches are already starting to formulate their storylines, or the seeds were planted last night. One of those being with LA Knight and Bronson Reed. I think this is going to be an interesting match. Also considering this is Eli Knight's first feud.
Eli Knight?
LA Knight. What I oh Eli? Oh Jesus,
Knight.
I combined the two. But yeah, LA Knight. Excuse me. LA Knight's first feud. Very interesting to have it against Bronson Reed. I think this ends up being an NXT Takeover match, considering they're having two nights. But they give you a lot of matches. I think. For the two nights. We already know Karrion Kross and Finn Balor for the NXT Championships happening. You would assume Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly is going to be happening. The contract is all but signed between Io Shirai and Raquel Gonzalez. Dexter Lumis versus Johnny Gargano is probably going to be a match for the NXT North American title. The undisputed NXT Cruiserweight title is going to be on the line with Devlin and Escobar. I thought their promo going back and forth last night was great. But one that I find interesting, I don't know if it's going to be a match at TakeOver, or they're going to set something up that leads to an eventual match with these two. But for the United Kingdom Championship, the NXT UK title, Walter versus Tommaso Ciampa.
Yep.
First off, that slap that he gave Ciampa, I felt it in Connecticut. He sent it to Florida. If I saw that live, unlike the one that I heard from Pete Dunne at Brooklyn, that's what I wanted to see from Walter. That thing was so freaking loud. Man.
It was a good welcome back for him.
Definitely
the
was.
chop heard round the world.
Definitely. And I know he's going to be facing Rampage Brown at NXT UK in 3 weeks, so he's going to have some major jet lag if he defends the title one night at NXT TakeOver and then has to do NXT UK Prelude the next day in the UK. Yes, I know they're pre-recorded, but still, doesn't matter. You know, in kayfabe, folks, keep kayfabe for just a little bit. But I think that's going to be, I hope that's where they're going. Obviously, Timothy Thatcher falls into the storyline as well. That is going to be a banger of a match. But what do you think of all the storyline progression last night of NXT? I thought it was very, very good.
I felt like both shows were really storyline oriented last night, like really focused on progressing storylines. We already talked about everything on AEW, and NXT, for that matter, had a lot going for it too. Even something as subtle as the grizzled young veterans in MSK, we know there's some history there. And I think that's really what NXT has been missing for quite some time, like storylines that you can get invested in. And I think part of making last night, for whatever, obviously the ratings and the viewership didn't reflect this, but NXT to me was still a really good show, because it did progress storylines. It happened right from the beginning of the show with Finn Balor and Karrion Kross there, and then it kind of continued throughout the night, progressing all the storylines. Even the Johnny Gargano, Dexter Lumis dynamic, that's still going on. So at least something that you can get invested in and be like, okay, well, I want to watch it because I want to see what happens with this storyline, not necessarily just focused on match.
Right.
Good match with the storyline associated with it, because that's the typical formula NXT follows. But I thought both shows really delivered and progressed storylines in that sense last night.
I totally agree. I think the storyline progressions were very good on NXT. I love the impromptu tag team championship match. I was going in it going, oh my God, they're going to make Kross and Balor the two-man power trip, but instead they make Finn Balor turn into a pinball where Karrion Kross is throwing him against the boards, taking the pin. And usually I'm not one that likes the champion getting pinned, but one, it's a tag team champion pinning the NXT champion, so it's not as bad. I think Birch and Lorcan definitely need to hold on to the titles, whether or not to drop it to MSK or Grizzly Young Veterans in the future. Yeah. I thought that was really good swerving and really good storytelling there. Everything with Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, the whole Kyle O'Reilly tried to swerve him off the road kind of thing. You think Adam Cole had a bad night. I mean, Britt Baker had it a lot worse, but still, that was still good stuff. I love in the Gargano Lumis match where it looked like Lumis was out to reach out, let's be friends. And Austin Theory got all excited, but then Lumis put him in the silence. That was some great stuff there too. Great storyline progression. And as far as match quality, I mean, it's NXT. I think they have great wrestling matches throughout. Zoe Stark excelled yet again in the women's match against Dakota Kai. Raquel Gonzalez, Io Shirai, I think that's going to be a great dynamic. Storytelling was there, man. It really was.
For sure. Yeah.
But you brought up the ratings. They both went down in the 18 to 49. AEW Dynamite managed to stay 6th overall in the 18 and 49 demographic, but going down from a 0.32 to a 0.38. Overall viewership did go up because they did increase in the 50-plus demo, so they finished with 768,000 total viewers. But NXT, they took a hit. They went from a 0.18 to a 0.13 this week and lost nearly 100,000 viewers, dropping to 593,000 total viewers. So, Ralph, we talked about both shows, gave a little synopsis, the highlights of them. Which show did you think was better this week?
I felt like Dynamite was better. Dynamite had the main event that everybody's talking about, and that's the one last thing. Like when everybody, if you watch both shows, you woke up this morning, thought about what you watched last night, what do you remember? Whatever left that lasting impression for a good reason is typically what is gonna sway your opinion. So I'm gonna have to go with Dynamite just because that main event was very good. And I think it helps solidify Britt Baker and prove that she is capable of being the face of women's pro wrestling, at least for AEW. And we'll see what happens from here on out. But I thought Dynamite took the cake last night.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. AEW Dynamite was such a good show, I think. I think they did a good job with the storyline progressions, with their storylines. And, I mean, we didn't even talk about this, but Sting, Darby Allin, Team Taz, Lance Archer, that whole dynamic was a very good segment. You close out one chapter, you go to the next one with Team Taz into Lance Archer. Brian Cage could be breaking out of Team Taz. I thought that was a really good segment. And there were a lot of like A or A+ segments last night on AEW Dynamite. NXT was good, but I didn't feel like they had that A+ segment last night. They had a lot of B's, B+, maybe even A-. But Dynamite had the Britt Baker match, the Sting segment, Jade Cargill, I think were all A segments last night. So hard to fight that one. So let us know what you guys think of AEW Dynamite and NXT this week in the comments below. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPB Podcast. And we got Merchant Mania going on. 20% off all our merchandise. Link is in the description. Subscribe, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.